My wife casually told me she cheated with her boss, then shrugged and said, "So what?" I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just quietly left something on the kitchen table that made her call me, panicking an hour later. What she found destroyed her entire world in ways she never saw coming. My name is Preston Whitman. I'm 42 years old, and I own a commercial cleaning company here in Phoenix, Arizona. Built it from scratch with nothing but a beat-up van and determination. 15 employees now, contracts with half the office buildings downtown. I thought I had everything figured out. Successful business, beautiful wife, smart daughter. It was a Tuesday evening in March when my world shifted. I'd just gotten home from dealing with a difficult client. Valerie was already at the kitchen table, picking at some takeout Thai food. Our 12-year-old daughter, Luna, was upstairs doing homework. "How was your day?" I asked, loosening my tie as I sat down across from her. Valerie didn't look up from her phone, just kept scrolling. "Fine," she said flatly. That should have been my first clue. Valerie was never just fine about anything. She was the type who'd give you a detailed breakdown of every conversation, every email at her marketing job. But lately, she'd been distant. More time at the office, more business trips, more phone calls in the other room. I grabbed some pad thai and tried again. "Luna said you might be getting that promotion, the regional manager position." Finally, she looked up. Her green eyes had this strange coldness I'd never seen before. "Yeah, about that." She set her phone down deliberately. "I need to tell you something, Preston." The way she said my name made my stomach drop. Not honey, not babe, just Preston. Cold and clinical. "Neil Caldwell and I have been seeing each other," she said, her voice steady as a surgeon's hand. "We slept together last month during the Atlanta conference." She paused, then shrugged. "So what? So what?" Two words that hit me like a sledgehammer. Not "I'm sorry." Not "it was a mistake." Just "so what?" Like she told me she'd picked up milk. I sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, staring at the woman I'd loved since college. The woman who'd stood by me when I was cleaning office bathrooms at midnight to pay for our wedding. "So what?" I repeated slowly, setting my fork down. Valerie actually shrugged and picked up her phone again. "It happened. I'm not going to pretend it didn't. Neil understands me in ways you never have. He gets my ambition, my drive. You're content running your little cleaning business forever, but I want more." Little cleaning business. The company that paid for her BMW, her designer clothes, our daughter's private school tuition. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. My hands were steady, which surprised me. Inside, I felt like everything was collapsing, but outwardly I was calm. "Where are you going?" Valerie asked, not looking up. "To think," I replied. And I did think. All night long, I thought about trust, about marriage, about what kind of example we were setting for Luna. But mostly, I thought about how someone could throw away 12 years with two simple words. By morning, I knew exactly what I was going to do about it. The next morning, I woke up at 5 a.m. sharp. Old habits from my early cleaning days when I had to hit 3 office buildings before most people had their first cup of coffee. But this time, I wasn't thinking about work schedules or supply orders. I made coffee in the dark kitchen, the same spot where my marriage had imploded 12 hours earlier. Valerie was still asleep upstairs, probably dreaming about her precious Neil Caldwell. Luna would be getting up for school soon, and I needed to act normal for her sake. That's when it hit me. I didn't know how long this had been going on. Valerie said it started during the Atlanta conference last month. But was that the truth? In my experience, cheaters rarely come clean about the full extent of their betrayal. They give you just enough to ease their conscience while keeping the worst parts buried. I pulled out my laptop and opened our shared cloud storage account. Valerie had always been careless with digital security, using the same password for everything. Luna 2011, our daughter's birth year. She thought I was paranoid for suggesting stronger passwords, but right now, her laziness was my advantage. Her photos synced automatically from her phone. I scrolled back through months of images, looking for anything suspicious. Most were work events, selfies with colleagues, pictures of Luna at school functions. Normal stuff. Then I found them. Photos from the Atlanta conference that she'd never mentioned to me. Valerie at a fancy restaurant, clearly not alone. Someone had taken the picture. Valerie in a hotel bar, looking relaxed and happy in a way I hadn't seen in months. And there, in the background of one photo, a reflection in a window, a man's silhouette that definitely wasn't hotel staff. My hand shook slightly as I saved the images to a separate folder. This wasn't just a one-time mistake. This was planned, calculated, ongoing. Dad! Luna's voice made me jump. She was standing in the kitchen doorway in her pajamas, hair messy from sleep. "Morning, sweetheart," I said, quickly closing the laptop. "You're up early. I heard you moving around down here," Luna said, rubbing her eyes. "Is everything okay? You and Mom seemed weird at dinner last night." Smart kid. Too smart for her own good sometimes. I forced a smile and stood up to make her breakfast. "Everything's fine, honey," I lied smoothly. "Mom and I were just discussing some business stuff. Nothing for you to worry about." Luna nodded but didn't look convinced. She sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Valerie had destroyed our family, and watched me pour cereal into a bowl. "Dad," she said quietly, "are you and Mom getting divorced?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I turned to face my daughter, this brilliant 12-year-old who could read situations better than most adults. "Why would you ask that, Luna?" She shrugged, stirring her cereal without eating it. "Some kids at school, their parents got divorced. They said their parents acted weird before it happened. Like they were pretending everything was normal, but it wasn't." I sat down across from her, choosing my words carefully. "Luna, your mother and I are going through some challenges right now. But no matter what happens between us, we both love you more than anything in the world. That will never change." She looked up at me with Valerie's green eyes, and I saw understanding there that no 12-year-old should have to carry. "I love you too, Dad," she said simply. After Luna left for school, I went back to my investigation. Because that's what this was now, an investigation. And I was going to uncover every lie, every deception, every moment of betrayal. By the time Valerie came downstairs for her morning coffee, I already had a plan forming. Valerie left for work that morning like nothing had happened. Kissed Luna goodbye, grabbed her travel mug, and walked out without looking at me. The audacity was impressive. I waited an hour, then called my lawyer David Richardson. We'd done business before when I set up my cleaning company contracts. "Preston, good to hear from you," David said. "What can I do for you?" "I need to discuss divorce proceedings," I said simply. "I see. When can you come in?" "This afternoon." "And David?" "This stays confidential." "Of course." 2 o'clock. After hanging up, I decided to dig deeper. I drove to Valerie's office building, parking across the street to observe. At 11:30 a.m., Valerie walked out with Neil Caldwell. Tall, silver hair, expensive suit. They didn't touch, but their body language screamed intimacy. They got into his black BMW and drove off. I followed them to an upscale restaurant in Scottsdale. Through the window, I watched them share lunch like a couple celebrating an anniversary. That's when I saw something that made my blood run cold. Valerie kept touching her stomach protectively, the same gesture she'd made when pregnant with Luna. Neil noticed too, placing his hand over hers with shared tenderness. My phone buzzed. "Working through lunch today. Client meeting running long." I took photos through the window. Neil kissing her hand. Valerie glowing with happiness I hadn't seen in months. Both looking at something on her phone with pure joy. When they left, instead of returning to the office, they drove to a medical complex. I watched them walk in together, Neil's arm around her waist. 30 minutes later, they emerged. Valerie held what looked like ultrasound photos, and Neil grinned like he'd won the lottery. The pieces fell into place. Her recent nausea blamed on stress. New aversion to wine. The protective stomach touching. Valerie wasn't just having an affair. She was pregnant with another man's child. I sat in my truck, staring at the photos, feeling like the ground had shifted. This wasn't just marriage betrayal anymore. This was about a woman carrying another man's baby while living in my house, sleeping in my bed. That afternoon, David Richardson's face was grim as I showed him the evidence. "This changes everything, Preston," David said. "If she's pregnant with another man's child and trying to pass it off as yours, that's fraud. What are my options? Document everything. Every lie. Every deception. Get a paternity test when the baby's born. Make sure she doesn't get your assets." I looked at the photos one more time. Valerie's radiant smile. Neil's possessive touch. The ultrasound representing final betrayal. "She made her choice, David," I said. "Now I'm making mine." 2 weeks of surveillance gave me a complete picture of Valerie's double life. She lived like a single woman with Neil while playing wife and mother at home. The pregnancy was progressing. I'd seen her hiding morning sickness, claiming stomach bugs. She even asked me to pick up prenatal vitamins for a friend at work. Tonight was the night I'd end this charade. I compiled everything onto a flash drive. Photos from the restaurant, medical complex visits, hotel receipts I'd found, text message screenshots from our phone records, even a recording from our security camera where she told someone on the phone, "Preston doesn't suspect anything. He's too busy with his little business to notice." Little business. The company that paid for everything she enjoyed. I also included documents David had helped me prepare, divorce papers, paternity test requirements, and a detailed breakdown of how her affair violated our prenup agreement. Valerie came home around 8, humming softly. She looked radiant, probably fresh from another afternoon with Neil. "How was your day?" she asked, setting her purse down. "Productive," I replied. "Very productive." She microwaved leftover Chinese food while I sat at the kitchen table, the flash drive in my pocket feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Luna's at my sister's tonight," Valerie said casually. "Sleep over with her cousin." Perfect. No witnesses for what was about to happen. We ate in relative silence. Valerie scrolled through her phone, probably texting Neil about baby names or nursery colors. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was planning a future with another man's child while sitting across from her husband. After dinner, I excused myself and went upstairs. I pulled out the flash drive and a simple white envelope. Inside, I placed a single note. "You always said I wasn't paying attention." Turns out I was paying attention to everything. I sealed the envelope and wrote, "For Valerie," on the front. When I came back downstairs, Valerie was in the living room watching some reality show. "I'm going to bed early," I announced. "Long day tomorrow." "Okay," she said without looking up. "I'll be up soon." But I didn't go to bed. I waited in the dark hallway until I heard her turn off the TV and go to the kitchen for her nightly glass of water. That's when I placed the envelope on the kitchen table, right where she'd see it in the morning. Then I went to my truck and drove to a hotel across town. I wanted to be far away when she opened that envelope. I wanted her to sit alone in the house we'd built together, surrounded by the lies she constructed, and truly understand what she destroyed. My phone would start ringing within the hour. But this time, I wouldn't be answering. My phone started ringing at 7:42 a.m. I was sitting in a diner 20 miles from home, drinking coffee that tasted like burnt regret and watching the sunrise through dirty windows. Valerie's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring. Second call at 7:44. Third at 7:47. By the fourth call, I could practically feel her desperation radiating through the device. I answered on the eighth call. "Preston, what is this?" Her voice was shaky, nothing like the confident woman who'd casually announced her affair 3 weeks ago. "What is this thing you left me?" "I assume you opened the envelope," I said calmly, stirring sugar into my coffee. "Preston, please. We need to talk. This isn't what you think. Isn't what I think." I pulled out my own copy of the photos I printed. "So you're not pregnant with Neil Caldwell's child? You weren't at the Renaissance Hotel last Tuesday when you told me you were visiting your mother? You haven't been planning a future with another man while sleeping in my bed." Silence. Long enough that I thought she might have hung up. "How long have you known?" she finally whispered. "Long enough to document everything. Long enough to understand that our entire marriage has been a lie for months." "Preston, I can explain." "No." I cut her off. "You had your chance to explain. Instead, you said, 'So what?' Remember? You made it clear that my feelings, our daughter's stability, our marriage vows meant nothing to you. What about Luna?" Valerie's voice broke. "She's our daughter. She needs stability. Our daughter deserves parents who don't lie to her," I replied. "She deserves to understand that actions have consequences, that betrayal isn't acceptable just because you're unhappy. Please come home. We can work this out. I'll end things with Neil." You'll what? Get rid of his baby? Pretend the last few months never happened? Convince me that the woman who looked me in the eye and said, "So what?" is suddenly remorseful. Another long silence. "The lawyers will be in touch," I continued. "Everything you need to know is in that envelope. Your choices led us here, Valerie. Now live with the consequences." I hung up and turned off my phone. 20 minutes later, I was at David Richardson's office, ready to file papers that would officially end my marriage to a woman I no longer recognized. "You sure about this, Preston?" David asked, reviewing the documents. "She's pregnant with another man's child and has been lying about it for months," I said. "She's been using our family money to fund her affair." She looked me in the eye and dismissed our marriage like it was a business transaction. David nodded grimly. The prenup makes this straightforward. Adultery voids her claim to marital assets. The pregnancy complicates custody of Luna, but given the circumstances, I want primary custody, I said firmly. Luna deserves a parent who won't lie to her about fundamental things like family loyalty. We'll make it happen. As David prepared the filing, I thought about Luna. She'd be devastated initially, but kids are resilient. Better to learn early that integrity matters more than convenience. That some betrayals can't be forgiven just because someone says sorry after getting caught. My phone had 17 missed calls by the time I turned it back on. I deleted them all without listening. Word traveled fast in Phoenix business circles, especially when it involved a pregnant woman, her married boss, and a husband who owned half the cleaning contracts downtown. I hadn't intended for the story to become public, but Neil Caldwell made a critical error. He tried to pressure me. Tuesday morning, he showed up at my office. Big mistake. Preston Whitman, he said, walking into my reception area like he owned the place. That's me, I replied, stepping out of my office. You must be Neil Caldwell. He was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive suit, confident posture, the kind of man who thought money solved everything. We need to talk, he said. Privately. I gestured toward my office. After you. Once the door closed, Neil's facade dropped. Look, I know you're upset about Valerie and me, but we need to handle this maturely. For everyone's sake. Maturely, I repeated. Like having an affair with a married woman and getting her pregnant. These things happen, he said dismissively. Valerie and I have real feelings for each other. We're planning a future together. This doesn't have to get messy. Doesn't have to get messy, I said, leaning back in my chair. That's interesting, because from where I sit, you've already made it messy. Neil pulled out his phone and showed me a bank transfer screen. I'm prepared to make this worth your while. $50,000 for a quiet divorce. No drama. No lawyers fighting over details. I stared at him for a long moment. You're trying to buy me off. I'm trying to be practical. Valerie's happiness is worth more than your wounded pride. That's when I lost it. Get out, I said, standing up. Get out of my office before I do something we'll both regret. Preston, be reasonable. Out. He left, but not before making his own critical error. He called my business partners, trying to pressure them into convincing me to take his deal. Bad move. My partners were family men who'd built their businesses on trust and integrity. When they heard that Neil Caldwell was trying to buy his way out of an affair scandal involving a pregnant employee, they made phone calls. By Thursday, half the business community knew the story. By Friday, Neil's company had started an internal investigation. The phone calls from Valerie became increasingly desperate. Preston, please. Neil's job is in jeopardy. If he loses his position, what happens to the baby? Not my problem, I replied. You chose him. Deal with the consequences. You're destroying innocent people out of spite. I'm not destroying anyone. Your choices are destroying people. I'm just making sure those choices have appropriate consequences. Saturday morning, I got a call from Luna. Dad, Mom says you and she are getting divorced because you can't forgive her for making a mistake. My heart broke a little. Luna, your mother didn't make a mistake. She made a series of choices over several months. There's a difference. She says you're being mean and won't let her explain. Luna, someday when you're older, you'll understand that some betrayals can't be fixed with explanations. What matters now is that you know both your parents love you, and that won't change. By Sunday, Neil's wife had filed for divorce too. Apparently, she'd hired her own investigator and discovered that Valerie wasn't his first affair. The house of cards is collapsing exactly as it should. 3 weeks into the divorce proceedings, David called with disturbing news. Preston, we have a problem. Valerie's attorney filed documents claiming you've been hiding assets. That's ridiculous. Everything's documented and transparent. She's claiming you transferred money to offshore accounts. Says you've been preparing for divorce longer than you've admitted. I drove to David's office immediately. The documents Valerie had submitted showed bank transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands, dated 6 months ago. My signature appeared on withdrawal slips I'd never seen. These are forgeries, I said, studying the papers. Look at the signature. It's close, but the P in Preston is wrong. David examined them carefully. You're right, but the account numbers match your business accounts. Someone with inside access did this. Valerie had access to everything. She handled our personal finances while I focused on the business. This is fraud, Preston. Criminal fraud. She's trying to frame you for hiding assets while simultaneously hiding her own actions. That evening, I confronted Valerie at her sister's house where she was staying. Nice try with the forged documents, I said when she answered the door. Her face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. The Cayman Islands accounts, Valerie. The ones you created using my business information to make it look like I was hiding money. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. You forgot that my business uses biometric security for all international transfers. Every legitimate transaction has my fingerprint verification. Your forged documents don't. Valerie's composure finally broke. You destroyed my life. Neil lost his job because of you. I'm pregnant and alone. I needed security. You had security. You threw it away for a man who's now pretending he barely knows you. Neil will come back once this settles down. Neil's wife took him for everything in their divorce. He has nothing left to offer you except empty promises. I left her standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. But I felt no satisfaction. This was just necessary cleanup from someone else's destruction. The next morning, David filed criminal fraud charges against Valerie. Within hours, her attorney withdrew from the case. No lawyer wants to represent someone caught forging financial documents, David explained, especially when those documents are part of a divorce proceeding. Luna called that afternoon. Dad, Mom says you're trying to put her in jail. Luna, your mother tried to steal money and blame me for it. That's called fraud, and it's illegal. She says she only did it because she was scared. Being scared doesn't excuse breaking the law. Sweetheart, your mother made choices, and now she has to face the consequences. Will I still be able to see her? That depends on what the court decides. But Luna, I want you to remember something important. When people do wrong things, there are always consequences. That's how the world works. That night, I received a text from Neil. This has gone too far. Call me. I deleted it without responding. He'd had his chance to handle things maturely. Instead, he tried to buy me off and pressure my business partners. Some bridges burned because they were built on lies from the beginning. For weeks later, Valerie played her most desperate card. I was at Luna's soccer game when I received a call from Phoenix General Hospital. Mr. Whitman, your wife has been admitted. She's asking for you. What happened? She collapsed at work. She's stable, but there are concerns about the pregnancy. Luna heard enough of the conversation to understand. Dad, is Mom okay? I need to check on her. Come with me. At the hospital, we found Valerie in a private room, looking fragile and pale. When she saw us, tears started flowing. Preston, thank God you came. I was so scared something would happen to the baby. Luna rushed to her mother's bedside. Mom, are you okay? I'm fine now that you're here, sweetheart. Dr. Peterson, the attending physician, pulled me aside. Mr. Whitman, your wife's condition is stable. However, she's been under significant stress, which isn't good for the pregnancy. What kind of stress? She mentioned ongoing legal issues, financial concerns, relationship problems. Stress can cause complications, especially in the second trimester. I looked back at Valerie, who was holding Luna's hand and looking at me with pleading eyes. Doctor, can I speak with you privately? In the hallway, I explained the situation. We're getting divorced. The baby isn't mine. She's been having an affair with her boss, who's now unemployed. I think this hospitalization is more strategic than medical. Dr. Peterson's expression changed. Are you suggesting she's faking her condition? I'm suggesting she's using her pregnancy to manipulate the situation. Has she actually had any serious symptoms or distress? Her vitals are normal. Blood pressure slightly elevated, but nothing dangerous. She insisted on being admitted for observation. How long does someone typically stay for observation in this situation? Usually 24 hours unless there are complications. That evening, Valerie asked to speak with me alone. Preston, I know I made mistakes, but this baby needs a father. Neil isn't reliable anymore. So you want me to raise another man's child? You could adopt the baby. We could work things out. Luna wants her family back together. Luna wants honesty, which is something you've forgotten how to provide. I'll do anything to fix this. I'll sign any agreement you want. The only agreement I want is our divorce finalized. Valerie's eyes turned cold. Fine, but don't expect me to make this easy for you. You've already made it easy by documenting your own deceptions. The next morning, Valerie checked herself out of the hospital. Within hours, she'd hired a new attorney and filed for emergency custody of Luna, claiming I was psychologically abusive and unfit for parenting. The gloves were off, but I'd been preparing for this fight since the night she said so what, and I intended to win. 6 months after that Tuesday evening, when Valerie casually destroyed our marriage, we stood in Judge Martinez's courtroom for the final hearing. Valerie sat across the aisle, visibly pregnant now, with a court-appointed attorney after her previous lawyer abandoned her case. She looked exhausted, defeated. The confident woman who'd said, "So what?" had been replaced by someone who understood that actions have consequences. Neil was nowhere to be seen. According to David's investigation, he'd moved to another state after losing his job and most of his assets in his own divorce. So much for the passionate future they'd planned together. "Your Honor," David addressed the court, "the evidence is overwhelming. Mrs. Whitman committed adultery, became pregnant with another man's child, attempted to defraud the court with false financial documents, and has shown no genuine remorse for her actions." Judge Martinez reviewed the file. "Mrs. Whitman, you've admitted to the affair. The paternity test confirms the child isn't your husband's. The handwriting analysis proves you forged financial documents. Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Valerie stood slowly. "Your Honor, I made mistakes. I was confused about what I wanted. I know I hurt my family, but I'm asking for mercy. I'm pregnant and alone." "Mrs. Whitman, this court recognizes that people make mistakes. However, your pattern of behavior shows calculated deception over months, followed by attempts to commit fraud when consequences arose. This isn't a mistake, it's a choice." The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. I received primary custody of Luna, the house, and all marital assets per our prenup agreement. Valerie received supervised visitation and was required to pay restitution for the attempted fraud. Furthermore, Judge Martinez continued, "Mrs. Whitman will receive no spousal support due to her violation of the marital fidelity clause. She forfeited those rights through her own actions." Luna squeezed my hand as we listened to the verdict. At 13 now, she understood more than I wish she had to. After court, Valerie approached us in the hallway. "Preston, I know you hate me, but please don't poison Luna against me. I'm still her mother. I would never poison Luna against you." I replied calmly, "But I also won't lie to her about what happened. She's old enough to understand that choices have consequences. What am I supposed to do now? I have nothing. You have what you chose, Valerie. Neil, the baby, the exciting life you wanted. The only difference is now you have to live it without using my resources." That evening, Luna and I sat on our back patio, watching the Arizona sunset. "Dad, do you think Mom will be okay? Your mother made her choices, sweetheart. She'll figure out how to live with them. Are you angry at her?" I considered the question carefully. I was angry. Now I'm just sad that she threw away our family for something that wasn't real. "I'm proud of you for not letting her lie to us anymore. Sometimes doing the right thing is hard, Luna, but it's always worth it." 3 weeks later, I heard through mutual friends that Valerie had the baby, a boy. Neil never acknowledged paternity. She was raising him alone, working part-time at a retail job, living in a small apartment across town. I felt no satisfaction in her struggles, but I felt peace knowing that Luna was learning that integrity matters more than comfort, that truth matters more than convenience. 1 year later, Luna and I had built a new normal. She was thriving in school, making friends, and had started playing violin, something she'd always wanted to try but Valerie had considered impractical. The cleaning business was doing better than ever. Word had spread about how I'd handled my personal crisis with dignity and principle. Other business owners respected that I hadn't let emotion cloud my judgment or compromise my values. "You showed class in an impossible situation," my biggest client told me. "That's the kind of person we want to do business with." Luna saw Valerie twice a month under court supervision. The visits were awkward but peaceful. Valerie had seemed to accept that her role in Luna's life was diminished by her own choices. "How's your mom doing?" I'd ask after each visit. "Tired," Luna would say. "She works a lot, and the baby cries constantly. She always looks sad." I never encouraged these observations, but I didn't discourage them either. Luna was learning valuable lessons about how life works when you build it on lies versus when you build it on truth. On a Saturday morning in March, Exactly 1 year after Valerie's confession, Luna and I were having breakfast when she asked an unexpected question. Dad, would you ever get married again? I don't know, sweetheart. Why do you ask? Because you deserve someone who won't lie to you. Someone who thinks you're amazing instead of boring. You think I'm amazing enough for both of us, I said, smiling. I'm serious, Dad. You're the best person I know. You didn't yell or break things or try to hurt Mom, even when she was really mean to you. You just did what was right. That afternoon, we drove past the restaurant where I'd first seen Valerie with Neil. It was closed now, another casualty of changing times. Dad, do you ever miss Mom? The way she used to be. I miss the person I thought she was, I answered honestly. But I've learned that missing someone who never really existed is pointless. I think Mom misses who she used to be too. Maybe that's a lesson she needed to learn. That evening, I tucked Luna into bed and reflected on the past year. Yes, my marriage had ended. Yes, I discovered that the woman I loved was capable of breathtaking betrayal. Yes, I'd had to fight for my daughter and my dignity. But I'd also learned that I was stronger than I'd realized. That Luna was more resilient than I'd feared. That building a life on truth, even when truth is painful, creates a foundation that can't be shaken by other people's lies. My phone buzzed with a text from David Richardson. Preston, got a call today from Neil Caldwell's ex-wife. Apparently Valerie tried to contact her, looking for money. Thought you should know the pattern continues. I deleted the message without responding. Valerie's ongoing struggles weren't my concern anymore. My concern was Luna, our business, our future built on honesty and integrity. 2 weeks later, Luna came home from school with news. Dad, I told my friends about what happened with you and Mom, about how you caught her lying and didn't let her get away with it. What did they say? They said their parents would never be that brave. That most adults just pretend problems don't exist instead of fixing them. What do you think about that? I think I'm lucky to have a dad who fixes problems instead of hiding from them. That night, as I watched Luna practice violin in our living room, I realized something important. Valerie's betrayal had cost me a marriage, but it had given Luna something invaluable. A father who demonstrated that principles matter more than peace, that truth matters more than comfort, that some things are worth fighting for even when fighting is hard. She was learning lessons about integrity that would serve her entire life, and that made everything we'd gone through worth it.